Welcome to this episode of The Juice. My name is Drew McDougall and I'm your host. I wanted to talk about Paris Hilton's new documentary entitled This Is Paris. It's out on YouTube for free. And, one of the reasons I went and checked out her documentary was because, you do hear about Paris Hilton. I was curious to understand her more. And she's actually a DJ. And I really did not know she was a DJ. I think I remember hearing something about that once back in college, but didn't really know that much that she was an actual DJ. And also in the documentary, she goes over her childhood and apparent abuse from a school that she went to in Utah, Provo, Utah. And she takes sort of an activist approach to speaking out as a survivor of abuse. And, it really does take a lot of strength and a lot of courage to speak out, especially publicly and on camera in a documentary. That really takes some courage, and I think we could all learn something, because abuse is really not okay, and we really need to acknowledge abuse as a bad thing and condemn it. And abusers really need to sort of be prosecuted depending on their level of abuse, because it's really not it's not okay. I remember seeing something about her. She was locked in a room and forced to take pills, and that sounds absolutely terrifying, and I'm really sorry that she had to experience that, and it's actually very upsetting to me. So go check it out on YouTube. It's free, and it's a decent documentary. You should enjoy it. I actually saw a live performance. I was out at a restaurant and there's some musicians playing, so I sat and watched, and I never actually got the name of their artists or the name of their band, but it was a bass player and a guitar player, and they played jazz. And you guys know me, big advocate of jazz, love jazz. So check out this bit. So I found a painting of a rhino by Robin Hextrum. This is the painting. I really liked it. Obviously, it's depicting a rhino in a sort of floral surrounding. This is actually a local Colorado artist, and I thought it was cool. It really reminded me of something underwater, like the coral of the Great Barrier Reef. However, I don't believe it's supposed to be underwater because I don't think rhinos can breathe. I really liked the composition and the way, just the way it's, the color composition really stands out and it really catches the eye. And it's very realistic. I think it's sort of, to play on its realism. And it's not just a rhino out in a field. It's sort of lightly I really like the fact that there's a whole field of flowers as opposed to field of grass and like it's in the Serengeti. Being that this artist is from Colorado, we don't have rhinos out in the wild, so I don't believe this was I believe she was Robin. I believe Robin was likely painting from an image or from memory. I don't know if Robin was out in the African Serengeti painting this wild beast. So speaking of the African Serengeti, I heard there was a baby giraffe that was born in Nashville that got stomped by his mom and died shortly after birth. It's really tragic. You have to realize giraffes have big club feet, and it's rather heartbreaking to know that its mother clumsily killed the baby. So I found this photo of this painting of a giraffe. I really liked the fact that it's dressed up in a tuxedo and is posing like it's a royal person, sort of a personified giraffe. And the fact that it's obviously indoors, sitting on a chair, gives it sort of a humor, makes it humorous. It's not exactly photorealism, but I think it's great, and it's a giraffe wearing a tuxedo. Who doesn't like giraffes in tuxedos? So, Joe Biden recently was inaugurated as the President of the United States. He's a glimmer of sanity in a world of gloom. Kamala Harris is the first female vice president that the United States has ever had. So he also managed to make history, and he's a familiar face. I really enjoyed Obama's policy style, and I think Biden has a good sense of and morality on how to enact policies. You could pretty much feel Biden after he took office. Trump left the election pretty sourly. I don't think he was really all that happy about losing the election, which, you know, politics is a rough game, and if you lose, you lose, and sometimes you just gotta suck it up and put on a good face and try to maintain composure. And I think Donald Trump kind of lost his composure there. And, you know, with the claims of election fraud and obviously inciting an insurrection, these are very huge things to be blurting out. Then followed by him being banned from Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, and then the whole thing with Parler being taken down. It's quite the ordeal. There's just something about the way Trump stood up and just in front of millions of people, kind of like you would see someone stand like doing a presentation in class and you didn't do your homework. So you're just kind of standing up there hoping no one in your class really notices you standing up there talking. And it's like, no, we all see you and we all know you're not that prepared for this. And I don't know, when Trump was in office, it just felt like this weird sort of depression, and it was just really upsetting. And like, I think it was just Trump and his policy. Trump was rather terrifying for the last 4 years, and I swear I'm not sure I would have lived through his next term if he had gotten another term. Mostly because he's just dangerous. Thank God Joe Biden's in office, and I'm so stoked. He got us back into the Paris Agreement, and also pulled us out of the Keystone Pipeline, did a bunch of environmental things. It is that kind of leadership that we need. Because as an environmental scientist, specifically those topics are huge. You could just feel we're talking about public health and toxic chemicals being burned into the general public and having a bunch of poor people mine it for the sake of creating jobs. And really, the devil will have you dig your own grave and will have you bury yourself. And that is exactly what the Keystone Pipeline was. I think the people defending it really don't have a solid grasp on science, politics, ethics, humanity, and regardless if they're poor and need a job, they should go work for some fast food joint, and I don't think our planet can really take it. And the amount of damage it would do that's irreversible is unreal. And I'm so proud of Joe Biden for understanding that. I do remember Donald Trump briefly, something about him not condemning white supremacy. So yeah, I condemn white supremacy and the terrorism and the violence surrounding it. You know, that whole subject actually sort of reminded me of biology. Sure, many of you have taken high school biology and you probably know exactly what I'm talking about, so I'm not trying to be your biology teacher. However, I did study briefly on a collegiate level, so I might have gotten a little bit more in depth, but I do remember this weird thing about, so you say whiteness, and that's, in genetics we refer to that as a phenotype. You know, you got the whole genome, and a section of it is the phenotypes. And the phenotypes are specifically like skin color, hair color, eye color. Very, you know, I sort of remember it as like phenotype, like a photo, visual, like a photograph. So like the things you see, as opposed to the other parts of the genome, like what type of blood type you have. You can't really take a picture of A negative versus O positive or O negative. And so, but those are also genetics. Like I said, not as visual. You can't really see them. And like things about your immune system and digestion and your hormones, you don't see that kind of stuff. So phenotypes, the visuals, it's kind of skin deep. And I just remember, I'm sure you guys remember something about alleles and dominant and recessive traits. And I think it's fascinating because you know, the term whiteness is kind of a genetic trait, and it's actually very recessive. As far as I know. I'm not a professional geneticist, but as far as I'm concerned, and I believe the darker pigment, or what's referred to as black, is actually more dominant. So it kind of just confuses me because it's like, okay, that specific trait is actually more dominant genetically than the white trait. The white trait is more recessive. And it's funny that the white trait is associated with supremacy, even though the dominant gene is not the white one. So just peculiar thing. And there's a lot of aspects about basic biology. There's a certain randomization. It's sort of a, I don't know if you guys are old enough to gamble, but if you've ever played the slots and you pull the thing and it spins the thing and you really don't know which one you're going to get. Or if you've ever played Powerball, there's a certain number of odds. Versus, you know, if you play like a local Powerball, you know, it's like 1 in 200 odds. Or if you play the big one, it's like 1 in 250 million odds that you win. Kind of a similar thing with genetics. There's a certain amount of randomization. And there's a lot of peculiar things. And I actually do remember a professor talking about a set of identical twins. They're considered identical. However, one was born with blonde hair, blue eyes. The other one was with dark hair, dark eyes. And they were twins coming from the same mom, born at the same time. And I believe they're identical. Maybe they're fraternal. However, you know, obviously they sort of hit, how you say, like, the jackpot. That's kind of a rare thing, because as I said before, the blonde hair, blue eyes is kind of more recessive. But that's just the thing, you know, you had two parents that had brown eyes, brown hair, and one of their kids comes out with blue eyes, blonde hair, which is interesting when you talk about interracial couples. It's usually non-interracial. You have two parents that are dark, have dark traits. Chances of their kid having dark traits is significantly higher. Not 100. They still have, you know, it's still a random trait, and they could still be born with lighter traits, even from darker parents. And even parents that are light, there's a random possibility that their kids could have dark traits. And that is, you know, obviously if their parents are both light, higher possibility that the kids are going to be light, but it's never 100%. Like I said, there's randomization aspect to it. So it's just very peculiar that this whole thing about supremacy exists, because you're actually talking about the recessive trait as something supreme, which, I don't know, I guess depending on your definition of supreme is, I don't know. But like I said, it's a phenotype, what you're talking about. I'm blonde hair, blue eyes, and sometimes I catch all of this weird kind of backlash. People think I'm some sort of white supremacist. Just being born with my traits automatically qualifies me as some sort of white supremacist. And it's like, that's not really true. Because really, you're talking about certain political organizations that are like that. And I'm really not affiliated with any of those political organizations. And, you know, I look back on my life, and as a straight white male, somehow we're not allowed to say that we're discriminated against. You're not black. Like, only black people get discriminated against. Like, I don't know. And like, which, you know, I do understand that majority of the people who are incarcerated are darker, and obviously that's what they're talking about by discrimination. Sometimes I feel like people just see me, make very fast assumptions that I'm a white supremacist, and then discriminate against me based off of that false assumption. And that's what really bothers me. And so I say discrimination, but it's discrimination of a false assumption, because they really don't know that and really can't make that kind of judgment call, and it's really not truthful. And so that's what I mean. It feels like discrimination. And it's interesting because we probably have the most tame straight white male population out of the history of white males. Really, that's just the Democratic Party.